As the summer approaches, there's much discussion to be had about what the Man United hierarchy should do to guide the team into a new chapter. So, as we're back in the studio, Ryon Scott Douglas is back at his beloved demo screen, and we're going to open up some big debate topics and try to put the world right in Manchester. Right, Ryan, over to you.
Here we go. Do you know what, guys? I had some stats, and I thought I didn't want to depress everybody. So we're going to just scrap the stats section altogether, and we're going to open up these debates because on the back of the Newcastle result, I mean, these conversations have been starting to form anyway, but on the back of the Newcastle result, more conversations are forming. So this is the first one, and it is a juicy one, I have to say. Was David De Gea underappreciated by the end of his Old Trafford tenure? So look, I've got his stats in front of me here. 545 games, 190 clean sheets. But let's be honest, guys, there was points where we were saying he could have saved the Titanic. He was that good, wasn't he? He was unbelievable. I mean, I hear shouts sometimes that he's one of the best keepers we've had. And I hear them shouts because you think about the defence that was in front of him and where we would have been without him and how he was potentially disgraced when he left as well. So, look, Crookie, I'm going to throw over to you here. Did we underappreciate David De Gea?
I think potentially at the end. You know, I think a lot of fans had forgotten all those Player of the Year awards. It's never a great sign for any football club if your goalkeeper is your best player because it means he's having to do too much work. But I've got to say, by the end, I was one of those who was advocating for a change. I think his form had tailed off. I think he was in need of a fresh challenge. He certainly wasn't justifying the huge wages that he was on. I didn't agree with the way the football club handled his departure. I think it was Erik ten Hag who at the last minute took the contract offer off the table. It meant he never got a chance to say a proper Old Trafford farewell, and I thought that was unfair. But both things can be right. You can say that actually it was time to move on from David De Gea, but that Andre Onana wasn't a suitable replacement. I remember speaking to someone very senior at another Premier League club when Onana was signed. I didn't know a great deal about him. I'd seen him play in the Champions League final for Inter Milan, had a good game that night. And I asked this guy, is this going to be a good move for United? He said, you know what? He's had a really good season at Inter, but if you look at his body of work before that, I'm not convinced. He makes too many errors. And I think probably that's been proved right now. So yes, it was right to get rid of De Gea. Onana clearly wasn't the right fit. I was just double-checking there. David Raya was available at that time. He joined Arsenal in the same summer that United signed Onana.
Oh, man.
So if you replaced De Gea with Raya, I think we'd be having a very different conversation.
He was only available for, that was like 30 million.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Well, he was on loan initially.
Exactly, on loan. To 25, that was it. And then they made it permanent. And I agree with Crookie in terms of both things can be right. The problem is that far too much at Manchester United is we have these conversations all the time about players that leave, right? About should we bring him back, or is there all of a sudden Anthony's all right? All of a sudden, you know, when Scott McTominay was playing with us in a double pivot with Fred, you know, it's get these guys out, and now they leave, and it's like, I'll tell you what, because we always replace them with worse players.
Yeah.
Look at Elanga, the same kind of vibe there. When he scored that breakaway goal against us, I'll tell you what, scoring a lot of goals. We shouldn't have sold him for 15 million. So both things can be right, but the problem is like Crookie said, replacing him with Andre Onana was not the answer. And David De Gea is 10 times better than him. Even that, 10 times better than him. Have him back in a heartbeat over Andre Onana, but that's probably not taking Man United forward. But you're right. If you were going to take out David De Gea for Onana, you should have just kept David De Gea.
Yeah, let's not shy away from what the comment section will be saying. Ange, right now, Onana, De Gea, straight swap. Would you take it?
I get why people would want the swap.
It's hypothetical, of course.
Yeah. I mean, technically on paper, he has more Manchester United experience. He has more Premier League experience. So, yeah, you would take him because Onana hasn't been great. But just because somebody's been replaced incorrectly doesn't mean that they shouldn't have been replaced, in my opinion. And I just feel like towards the end, like, De Gea was, he wasn't passing out from the back correctly. He was making a lot of errors. It wasn't a good look. I understand the Onana situation. Maybe we'll get more into it when we're talking about the Lyon game. But I understand the stats aren't great. When it comes to his save percentages, it's not good. There are certain stats where he seems to be better regarding his, clean sheets with the Premier League and stuff. But, there's a lot of not great goalkeepers, let's be honest. I just think the way that people are now treating Andre Onana is just not conducive to being helpful. Because when we go into this Lyon game, what we're going to do, carry on making fake memes of him? Are we going to carry on taunting him? Are we going to carry on chanting all this rubbish? Like, this is what we've got. Bayern Day ain't no better because he was not... And listen, he didn't lose us that game. He had a terrible defence in front of him as well. But his kicking was abysmal.
Yeah.
He wasn't good enough. So this is what we've got. So I would say to people, to fans that are hating on him and jumping on this bandwagon, this is our first choice goalkeeper. So going into Thursday, you need to get behind him because how's it going to help hating on this
You see
guy?
the thing with that though, we literally, the problem with that is you're 100% right. You don't want to like chastise your players, so we don't want them to play badly.
Yeah.
We literally just got behind Andre Onana for chucking it to Matic. We just got behind something that he created.
When you look on social media, a lot of people were actually going with Matic, but that whole thing was orchestrated by a journalist stirring the pot.
Yeah.
Because had Matic have read that full quote, Andre Onana, in my opinion, did absolutely nothing wrong. He's coming out of I'm talking about before the game, of course.
Yeah.
So when he comes out of that Manchester derby, it was the most boring game. We've all spoken about it. He's trying to be a little bit positive.
Yeah.
Also, I know that in Cameroon that they do speak English and they do speak French. I don't think English is his first language. So you're being asked a question. He said way better. It's one word that everyone has now decided to jump on. Matic, probably mates with David De Gea, probably wants to have a little bit of a pop. Kind of interesting that him and Ruben Amorim did play together, but I just think the way that the whole thing was taken was a waste of everybody's time.
But you know the error that
ridiculous.
Onana made? I think you're right, because I spoke to him after the Manchester derby. He made similar comments to me. I didn't see them as antagonistic. I think actually Matic has been very clever, because he's used it to create a siege mentality, whip up a bit of a storm against Onana.
Which happened
and
at
it's paid
Lyon.
off.
It's a masterclass, by the way.
However, he shouldn't have fired back with a tweet.
I agree. And this is the thing. If you're going to start talking like that and you're going to start getting involved, then you have to perform on the pitch. And it was written, I think we all knew, had Matic have been on the pitch, he'd have scored. Do you know what I mean? It was one of those moments where you just knew it was written. So what I would say is, the initial thing that he said is, there's nothing wrong with it. Matic responds, the journalist stirring the pot, etc. Like you say, he knows what he's doing. I think that Onana was probably ill-advised, or if he wasn't advised at all. He also had another personal situation where his wife had been through an extremely traumatic situation, not even a couple of weeks before that. And, he's maybe not responded the right way. But I think as Man United fans, and there were a lot of fans on Twitter that were going after him. I was reading the comments saying, how can you go against Matic? Like, he's better than you were at Old Trafford and all that stuff. So I just think people need to get behind him. I think the whole thing is just very unfortunate. But there's definitely worse goalkeepers in Man United's history.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to... sounds like you've jumped to his defence there, look, which is fine, and I completely agree with you. I'm going to piggyback on something that you've said there. Onana's made, horrendous mistakes. Of course, we know that. Bayanda comes in. He makes mistakes as well, okay, in that Newcastle game. You can put it down to whether, game time or what have you. Flex, at some point, do you look at the coaching? Do you look at the goalkeeping coaching and think, why is this happening?
Onana's just not good enough.
He's
just not good. Like
Onana.
The thing is that there's so many factors to this, right? Apart from if we just stick on the main thing that we just all will agree with, he ain't good enough. No. Last season, we single-handedly finished bottom of the Champions League group because Andre Onana kept throwing the ball in the back of the net.
He did.
Yeah.
High-profile errors. Yeah. This season, Brighton, Jorginho Rutta, Forest at home, shot in the middle of the goal. Gibbs White.
Yeah.
Everton.
8 errors leading to goals.
He's got the most errors leading to goals in the league.
And actually...
There's so much... Forest, the first game of last season, falls backwards and they put him in an F1 car.
That was unreal. But that was unreal, by the way.
How many...
But even this picture he used for the social media post, he's obviously boasting about winning the FA Cup.
Yeah.
He chucked in City's goal in the Cup final.
The reason that game in the last 10 minutes we were nailed by it, which should have been an average 2-0 win, was because he threw Doku's ball into the net.
I know.
So all of this stuff that he's saying... The reason why it was so difficult to back him in that moment, the real reason, I don't agree with fully going against your player before the game, but if we're being honest, the real reason we couldn't have a siege mentality to get behind Onana is because we knew that performance that he did was very capable.
You can't be talking that talk.
He comes out before the game, walking up to the ultras with wired headphones in.
I know.
Looking at them, taunting them.
He's putting a target on his back when he can't respond to the pressure.
And then you don't deliver.
No,
and just his body of work.
Had he have delivered, it would have been...
Exactly, could have shut everyone up. But
it's a big if, though, isn't it?
Exactly. And the body of work since he's been here has just been too bad. There's been not like you passed it out from the back because the manager's asking. I'm talking about goalkeeping fundamentals.
Yeah.
Can't dive, can't save the ball, flappy wrist, or wrist too hard so it's bouncing straight back into danger. Not good enough.
Fair enough. Look, I can only agree with what you're saying there. So I've got to be one word and one word only. Which keeper starts on Thursday? We're going to start with you, Ange. Bayindir, Onana, or maybe a third option that I've seen Flex talk about.
Onana.
Onana, Crookie?
Yeah, I think it'll be Onana.
Flex?
I want Tom Heaton, but it will be Onana.
Onana. Okay, right. So that's wow. We got stuck into that one. Fair enough. And that's
These are
the
big
first
debates.
topic. Yeah, big debate, big topic.